Welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, psychic medium Carrie Muggs. This is where we learn all things spirit, everything from spiritual gifts, awakenings, ghosts, aliens, and starseeds. Nothing is untouchable, but always fun and spunky. I am honored to be on this spiritual journey with you, so make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Hello and welcome to the Spunky Spirit Podcast. I'm psychic medium Carrie Muggs, and today is totally unscripted, and we are going to be talking about anxiety. And I'm going to tell you right now, full medical disclosure, I am not a medical medium, and I am not a medical person. I'm just going to tell you some things that have helped me in the past and some things that I have done for anxiety and how common it really is. And of course, the reason why we're talking about it, or I'm talking about it this week, is because I struggled with it this week. And I don't know if you've noticed, but for me, anxiety gets a little worse during hormonal times of my life, like certain times of the month or certain times and I'm done menopause, but I still have my ovaries, and sometimes, or I don't know if it's just that I pick up on my girls' hormones when they're going through it, but sometimes, or it could just be that I that I don't realize that there's just certain triggers that throw me off, and so I just know that I posted something on Instagram this week about anxiety, and I posted about comparing ourselves to other people, and it causes me anxiety. It causes me, I feel like there's this performance anxiety that I have for readings sometimes. Instead of going in with the mindset of, let's just see what happens, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, I can give you your money back. I go in with this, I've got to be perfect. It's got to be awesome. And that's a total fixed mindset. A total fixed mindset is going in and saying, I got to be perfect. It's got to be good. I got to be the best. And in reality, life is about growth. I need a growth mindset. And the fixed mindset gives me such anxiety and there's just this persona that you have to live up to, and this perfectionism that you have to live up to. And this might not be the case with some of you, but I do know that when I did post that comparison thing on Instagram, so many people reached out, so many people understood, so many people said same to me, or they've been going through it too. And it might not be performance anxiety, and it might not be a fixed mindset anxiety. It might be something else, some trauma that happened when you were little, and something happens that it triggers that, and you're not even sure that that's what it is. I just know from my experience when I was little, when this whole spiritual thing started happening. And here's the thing I want to tell you guys too. Sometimes anxiety can deal with spiritual stuff, and sometimes anxiety is your own triggers and your own demons. To me, it's all spiritual. To me, it is. But here's the thing. If it is it's affecting your daily life. If it's affecting your daily life, I don't want you to just chalk it up as, oh, this is a spiritual awakening, or this is something spiritually I'm going through. It could be, but you know what? If it's affecting you daily, you need to seek professional help. That's just how it is. There's a fine line between mental health and spiritual awakenings lately. And, just be on the safe side. Always, always be on the safe side. If it's affecting your daily life and it is making it so you can't function, seek professional help. Don't just chalk it up as, this is my awakening and I got to muster through it. Give yourself some grace here, guys. This is, anxiety is no joke. It's no joke. It can literally put some people in panic mode, and it can literally just freeze people. So my anxiety started about the same time my gift did. My gift started when I was 5 in kindergarten. I guess my gift might have started early because I remember seeing things before that, but very, very noticeable when I was 5. And I remember I had ulcers in kindergarten. I had stomach aches constantly. I had stomach issues constantly. And I would always tell my mom I have a stomach ache. She would come get me from school all the time. And they finally took me to the doctor because I was having so many stomach aches. And I had ulcers. And I feel like a lot of it was anxiety. And here's the thing. I used to tell people that the anxiety was from some of the things that I would feel around me and some of the spiritual experiences that I've had. Because I read Teresa Caputo's very first book, and she talks about her anxiety a lot, being out in the rain, doing different things, and being in big crowds. And she had anxiety, and she kind of went through the same thing. And so I thought, oh, that must be it. So for a long time, I taught, or I even told people, and even little kids now, sometimes your anxieties do have to do with spiritual stuff. And that could be absolutely true. But I also want to let you know that there were some other things in my life that came to play. My dad was a major alcoholic. He was drinking every weekend, if not every week. And I had to watch my mom go through with this and deal with this all the time. And it kind of turned me into a people pleaser. I really believe that my dad drank because he was a good guy when he was sober, and he wasn't a bad guy when he was drunk. He was just stupid. That's what I always call it. But there were these other playing things in my 5-year-old life that could have caused these ulcers, not just spiritual things. And so I did get on some Tagment, or I did get on some stuff that helped, but it didn't really, I don't remember if it helped a lot. I just remember these stomach aches all the time. And I turned, because of this dynamic, I turned into a major people pleaser, total codependent people pleaser. And I always had to please my father and my mother, which is crazy because they weren't abusive and they weren't neglectful and I had a pretty good, besides the fact that my dad was an alcoholic, I can't even tell you, like, they wouldn't have spanked me. They didn't care if I got A's. They didn't care if my poor brother, my brother got horrible grades and they didn't care. They didn't do anything. So, there were times though that I did watch, sometimes my dad would spank my brother, and it would scare me so bad that it would make me so nervous that I would laugh. And so I was a complete people pleaser. And so because of this, I feel like I always have to be on my best performance, or I always have to give my best I always have to be good enough. And then, when I had a high school relationship where he always cheated on me constantly. And then I got married to a man who I thought was pretty religious, and I thought if he was religious, he can't drink, so I'm pretty saved. But then he ended up constantly cheating on me too. So I always had this thing about always having to be on this pedestal. And I remember too, sometimes my mom would say when I was little, your dad has you on a pedestal and you just fell off. And that really affected me a lot. Like, I'm not saying my mom did on purpose. We do things all the time to our kids without realizing. I'm sure I've said some things to my kids without even realizing that maybe that, triggered something. So just remember, you do the best you can. We're kids raising kids sometimes. And so, anyways, I just feel like, I've told a lot of people that I had all this anxiety when I was a kid because of the spiritual stuff. So I was seeing ghosts, and I was having paranormal experiences, and in fact, in high school, I drank a lot because I wanted to shut it off. But also too, there was some mental issues going on in my life, mental stuff. And so now I have some triggers, and my triggers are when I don't feel like I'm good enough, or I feel like I have to be the best, or I feel like I'm being measured to something else. And that's why I posted this thing on Instagram saying that we compare ourselves to other people, and I do compare myself to other mediums. I don't feel like mediums are superior to other people. I don't feel like anybody's superior to anybody. I feel like no one's superior to anybody. Nobody's inferior to me. We're just who we are. I'm just me. And so I do believe that we're all born with different gifts. Some come naturally, some we have to work out. Manifestation is not a natural gift for me. It is. I've seen this gift in many of my clients. Manifestors like crazy. I call it the gift of miracles. And I've seen other natural gifted mediums. But I've also seen people who have never had a medium experience their whole life. They lose a lost loved one, and all of a sudden they start to connect and they work on their mediumship capabilities, and they start to get better. It's like a sport. We are so tuned into natural abilities, and because we like superheroes, we like people who stand out, who have this naturally. But like Michael Jordan and Muhammad Ali, they weren't naturally born to be a great basketball player and a great boxer. They had some abilities, but they worked their butt off to get where they're at. And so just know that, and I don't even know why I went off on that tangent. It's just because if you work at stuff, if you work at things, you can become whatever you want. I can be a better manifester if I work at it. But I am the type, and my son is the type, that we think we have to be so good right now, even without the practice. We have to be naturally smart. We have to be naturally gifted. We have to be, in a long time I went off my natural gifts. I went off, this just happens naturally. But now I know that I got to work at this. This is something I got to work on every single day because there are so many other mediums out there or gifted healers that, and I'm not comparing myself to, but I want to be my best me, not better than them, but my best me. And so it's something you got to work on constantly. And I tell my students who take my mediumship course, you have to practice, practice, practice. And they ask me all the time, well, how do we practice? Well, I practice because I do readings. Readings are the best practice, but there's other ways you could practice. I just don't have a lot of them come to I think I have it in my awakening class. There's some practices in there that's online. So, but I also watched, I don't know if you guys have seen this. The reason why I decided to talk about it too is because I watched Life Before Death or Life After Death or something like that with Tyler Henry. Now, I resonate with him so much because we both scribble. That's pretty much it. We both scribble. So I'm like, but I've read his book, and a lot of the things that he described in his book, I resonated with it a lot. And I resonate with other mediums too, but his just stood out to me. And there were so many times in his book that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Just so many aha moments. And in some of my other classes and in some of my other mentor classes that I've been in, I didn't resonate with some of the things that the teacher or the mentor taught. And so it didn't, it was different. I really resonated with Tyler Henry. And he, in this thing, I could see he had good readings, spot on readings, and he had some not so good readings. It's a total normal thing. And even Tony Stockton, he says, you're only as good as your last reading, because it's not all perfect all the time. And I have this pressure of having it be perfect all the time. And it's just going to be like, I'm human. And every day at work, if you have a bad day at work, so are some mediums. Some mediums are going to have a bad day at work. That's why I really struggle listening to some mediums podcasts when they kind of say, well, I went to this medium and it wasn't so great. Well, maybe that medium had a bad day, And so it's just and that triggers me and that stresses me, because then I'm like, well, what if I'm not that great? So it's just such a hard thing. But anyways, I was watching Tyler Henry. I'm just totally going off on a tangent too. So hopefully you guys kind of understand this, and if you deal with anxiety, that it kind of resonates with you in your anxiety way. Does that make sense? Like, you probably don't have anxiety about being a medium unless you're an up and coming medium, but you probably have anxiety about other things, about being a good mom or doing a good job at work or being a good wife or starting a business. So hopefully you'll find some parallels with this. But in this show, Tyler Henry, he had some great spot-on readings and some where he had a hard time connecting, and it was totally normal, and nobody thought less of him. Nobody cared. He wasn't expected to have a grade on his performance, and he also was so, at the very end, he had so much anxiety. Like, he had so much anxiety sometimes before the readings when he would go in and drive in the car to the readings, he would scribble or he would get information before because he was so nervous about it. And I love this because I was taught that it's called stacking, and I was taught that mediums, it's kind of a bad thing to, before a reading, stack your information and then go into the reading with it. And I thought, well, why is that such a bad thing? Well, that's just because that's what the lady who was teaching the class taught. But with Tyler Henry, he does it. And he's a great medium. So that's what I'm saying. Just listen to yourself and know what's going, this is why there's no one else out there but you. So you just got to be you. And I need to listen to my own advice. So he, at the end, this being a medium has really taken a toll on him, not only emotionally, but physically. And he will sleep for days. He will do one reading and sleep for days. And so me getting tired, I've been so hard on myself. I'm like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do this? And I do 3 readings a day. And so, we got to give ourselves some grace sometimes. I think it's that perfection performance that I grew up having to have. And doing such a people pleaser. I just want to please my clients so bad because the readings are so sacred and I wanted to be spot on that I just put so much pressure on myself. And I saw that he did the same thing when he did the group reading. When he went into the group reading, like he went into the hotel and nobody could talk to him whatsoever. He couldn't be around anybody. He had such anxiety and he was so stressed. And a lot of it too was because he was having a little bit of PTSD because the last group reading he did, or the last event he did, his lung collapsed. And so he was worried about that. But that on top of the performance anxiety. And so I just want you to know too that I don't know if I'm just making excuses for myself, but if you're anything like me and you resonate with this, we are so freaking hard on ourselves most of the time. Most of the time, nobody's really, I know people leave thinking about their readings, and I know people, listen to them later. But at the end of the day, it's not about me, or it's not about how well the reading went. I'm here for the spirits. I'm not even really here for the clients. I'm here because the spirits want to reach out to their loved ones and give them messages. And I'm so concerned about the client in front of me and my performance sometimes that I forget about the spirit. And I love that this brings me back to this. And it's not, and so we've got to figure out at the end of the day, I sometimes wonder, anxiety can be triggered by certain things or certain traumas that happened to us when we were little. But anxiety can also be created from a fear of what other people think. And I think a lot of it stems down to, even if we were in a trauma, and that's not entirely fair, because I think that veterans and people who have had traumatic experiences, like veterans who hear the fireworks, that fear, that PTSD that they have, that does not stem from fear of what other people think. So there are differences. There are differences in some PTSD of some other trauma-related things. But a lot of our anxieties and a lot of our fear comes from the fear of what other people will think. I'm reading this book because it's it's called Mindset, and also Psycho-Cybernetics, I think, because I really want to figure out this anxiety thing. And I want to change my mindset to a growth mindset and not a fixed one where it always has to, like, there's no room for growth. I don't give myself room for growth. And there was a guy who when he was little, he was in 2nd grade or I think 3rd grade, and he accidentally peed his pants in class. And instead of the teacher quietly calling the mom and having him bring clothes or anything like that, which I remember this happening before when I was little, but my teacher, thank heavens, just took the child, put him in the nurse's room, and the mother brought a clean pair of clothes. No one even really knew what happened. But this teacher brought up the child in front of the classroom and made fun of him and said, "This is what you don't do." And he was humiliated. And that whole rest of his life, he had anxiety anytime he was in a crowd. He couldn't handle crowds because of what happened. And he didn't know that that's why. So a lot of my people out there that I say, you don't like crowds. Okay, that's great if you don't like crowds because you're clairsentient or you're empathic and you take on their feelings. But I also want you to dig deeper. I want you to figure out, okay, that could be it. It really could be it. But what if there was something that happened to you when you were little with a lot of people around and it triggered that? Does that make sense? And this is where we have the fine line of spiritual anxiety or spiritual awakening and mental health. And so I always want you to be so aware of both, because even though they're separate, they're so together at the same time. They can intertwine. So he had, and I don't really feel like, I mean, his fear could have, that's what it stemmed from. It stemmed from when that person made fun of him, that teacher made fun of him, And at the bottom line, it is about what other people think, right? That one is about what other people think. But there's a lot of fears out there that are not. So, and mine, I have a lot of some of just people pleasing or trying to be the best. And I think I currently, have noticed it more because I think we didn't talk about anxiety when I was little or my age. And even when my kids were little, I just always said, okay, I had a deal. I didn't even know it was anxiety, honestly. I mean, there was a time when my son was going through some stuff and we did, panic stuff, and we did take him to a counselor for that. And my daughter, she had stomach aches too. And I took her to the doctor for ulcers. It never really clicked that we were having this pattern until now. And I see my older kids, now that my kids are older, and I see the anxiety that they have. And I see, and it's probably, and I see sometimes it gets a little worse. And I think it's because we didn't really address it as anxiety when they were little. I always said to them, like, they'll be like, Mom, I'm scared, or Mom, I can't, and I like, do it scared. Put your big boy pants on, put your big girl pants on, and do it scared. Because that's how I was taught. My mom was just like, just do it. And that's how we were taught to deal with our anxiety. And maybe that is how you're supposed to. I don't know the right way to deal with anxiety. Like, I don't like, I think there's a happy medium. I don't think you should just push somebody into panic attacks, but I also don't think you should coddle somebody so much that they can't live their lives. So this is kind of the happy medium. But I also noticed that I think what I had as anxiety also sometimes returns, especially this whole not being good enough for my sometimes my parents, and not being good enough for my ex-husband and my high school boyfriend, who I did date for 7 years. And so always playing this repeating pattern. And now I'm in a healthy relationship who I am good enough for, so I'm having it repeat in my career. And so just so you know, I am opting in counseling. I'm doing a counseling called, I think it's either, and I always get this mixed up, it's EDMR or EMDR. And I'm trying to process why this triggers me, or why this happens to me. Where was it something traumatic in my life? I want to pinpoint, was it something traumatic in my life, or was it, is it spiritual? Is it just growth? It's just growth, and that's what you go through when you grow. I've talked to my spirit guides about this. And they always reassure me. Like, they always show me signs that I'm doing the right thing. I'm going in the right direction. And some weeks, it's so crazy because some weeks I'm fine. Some weeks I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll just do better next time. And it's crazy because a bad reading, in my opinion, is not a bad reading to some of my, I have different expectations than my clients do. And so, because I'm really hard on myself. I'm really, really hard on myself. And that was another thing that was really good to watch Tyler Henry, because he, he had good ones and bad ones. And my mentors never talked about that. My mentors were always like, work hard, do good readings, blah, 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 blah. Except for one of them was always like, okay, she said I didn't feel good about doing this reading, so I did another one for her for free. I will do another one for free, or I'll just give you your money back. It's up to you, however you want to do it. But I just, and I'm not even sure why I decided, why I decided to do this topic. I think it's because there's so many people out there that resonate with anxiety, that have anxiety. It just is different it's just in a different scenario with them. It's just in either their own careers, their own business, their own trying to be good enough, their own marriages. And I just don't want you guys to feel like you're alone. And I don't want you to feel like you're not good enough, because I know what it's like. I do too. And sometimes we see on social media these people who play like their life is so perfect, and we see all these great moms, and we see all these great, everything's perfect, and then we think, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. I'm not at that level. And I just always want to be fully transparent with you. And that's why social media is hard for me too, because when I do look at other people, this is why I don't hardly ever get on social media, because I do see through that. I do see people post perfection, and I know it's not. Just because of my gift, I try not to tap in, but sometimes, even like it's like when I watch the news, sometimes things will come through, and I don't, even if I don't want it, sometimes it'll come through. And I just want to be fully transparent with you guys all the time. And I want you to know that, this isn't, especially those out there that are trying to step into your gift. And those of you out there that want to do a business, a spiritual business, and those of you who want to practice mediumship, so good for you. So good for you. And I want to be there and support you 100%. But it would be a lie for me to tell you it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. And it's not because I'm weak. It's because I'm telling you the truth. I'm being super truthful. And it is hard. And unless you have a superiority complex and think you're all that and you're the shiz, then, it's going to be hard. And unless your confidence level is like off the charts, which I have a few mediums that I know that are, which is good for them. That's good because they either probably worked really hard to get there or they have a superiority complex. I don't, and that's just my opinion. And I'm not like judging. I know that most of the people that follow me because we resonate. So I know you guys that are listening are nervous and you get scared and it's hard. And I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that this is a hard profession, and any profession you choose is hard if you want to be good at it, right? And I want you to know that the anxiety is real. And it weighs on you and it makes you feel like you're not good enough. And especially if you do compare yourself to other healers or other, I did the same thing too when I was a Beachbody coach. I compared myself. So maybe it is just a me thing, but I feel like there's a lot of us out there that struggle with it sometimes. And does it consume me every day? No. Nope. Just like every once in a while, like just this week it did. And was there something that triggered it? Yep, there was. And then I'll probably be okay for another 3 or 4 weeks and do the whole step into my power and be confident. And then something else will trigger it down the road. You just got the vulnerable triggered part right now. And it's crazy too how the trigger happened, then another thing happened, and then the Tyler Henry thing came on. It's like not a coincidence that things fall into place. This is a total growth moment for me. But I want you to mostly know that you're not alone and that no matter what you're doing or what you're trying to strive for, there's going to be some anxiety. And you can do a couple things. There's a lot about meditation, but if you're anything like me, I do meditate every day, but sometimes when you're in it, when you're in the anxiety, meditation is almost impossible because you can't get it out of your head. That's what anxiety is. You play it over and over and over in your head. There's also tapping. And if you don't know what tapping is, I want you to go to Google and I want you to research it. It's when you take your hands and you tap different places in your body. This totally helps me a ton. And while you're tapping, you say affirmations. So you'll take both hands, tap your head, tap your face. This is what I do. If I start to get nervous or start to feel anxiety, I will tap the center of my chest and start to say affirmations. That is the number one thing that helps me the most. But I can't tap during or before, during readings. So but I couldn't because I'm focused and I'm connected anyway. But it's not a 100% cure-all. It helps for the moment that you're tapping, but then as soon as you stop, you can start thinking those thoughts again. Counseling. Trauma counseling, EDMR or any EMDR or any type of counseling is my biggest suggestion if the anxiety is crippling you enough that you can't function day to day. If it was to the point where I couldn't even go into a reading and do a reading and perform, then that's functioning. That's fully functioning for me. So I just have to tell you about my own experience. I choose the EMDR or EDMR because to me, it's also a very spiritual healing. It opens and connects you to spirit. There's a bilateral thing that they do. You can either tap or you hold these things in and it goes back and forth, and your body, your mind is connecting to this bilateral thing that it opens you up to spirit, and that has been my experience. So while you're counseling with a counselor, and so that's been my biggest thing. And so, but if you can't afford counseling, journal, 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 journal. Lots of journaling, lots of automatic writing, lots of tapping, and seek out. There's got to be places sometimes that that can help, that are not very expensive, and medication. You know what? If it is affecting your full capacity to live, then definitely medication. Do I believe that certain medications block you from connecting? I don't think so. I mean, I used to think so because that's kind of what I was taught. And I do know that during different times, when I was going through my divorce, I was on a medicine called Effexor. And I always thought that Effexor was making it so I couldn't connect. But honestly, I was so low frequency and so depressed, that could have been what was not. So it's not a fair assumption that the medication was not letting me connect. So I don't fully agree with that. I've had people be on medication and totally be able to do spot on readings. So I don't, and I think it's that belief. It's that belief that we're taught. If you believe that you're on medication and you can't connect, then you won't. But if you believe it won't affect you, then it won't. We are so much more powerful than we think. And it's so crazy because we're told one thing and we believe it, and then that becomes truth for us. So I don't want that to be truth for you. Anything that I say, I want you to find your own truth. I want you to find your own truth. So if I say, so I've been told that dairy clogs your third eye. That's not true for me. That's not. I let it be true for me because somebody told me that, but it's not. It's not true for me. And so just validate your own stuff, maybe muscle test a little with these things and find your own truth. So I know this episode was more about, I feel like it was kind of off the charts, but honestly, it's a thing that we deal with all the time. And Spirit tells me all the time that I need to live in the now. I need to be in the now, in the moment, and not worrying about the next reading that's coming up or not worrying about the next thing that's coming up, and find pleasure and happiness in the now. Because I do know this, when I go into a reading, I have to unpack all of my baggage and all of my anxiety mentally and put it in another room and go to the reading fully in the now. I cannot be thinking about what I'm going to cook for dinner or what anxiety I have and while I'm giving a reading. If I did, the reading would suck and I couldn't connect. So maybe that's just the message here, is that we do the best we can and we live in the now. And we don't wait for the next big break. And we just be happy in the now. And, I gave you I talked a lot about me, but I'm hoping that I hope it helps you. I hope it resonates with you, and I hope you realize that anxiety is no joke. It can be crippling. And so if you're dealing with somebody who has it, don't expect them to just be like, a lot of times people are like, just buck it up, just deal with it. Sometimes that's not doable. Sometimes that's not possible. And so if you have somebody around you that has anxiety, give them compassion and just sit with them. Just sit with them and listen. My poor husband, he is so good at this. When I have anxiety, that's the one thing, is he will have it too sometimes. And we just listen. We don't try and fix it. And that's really hard for me because I try and fix things. But we just listen. And sometimes that's all you need. And if you yourself are dealing with some sort of anxiety, anything in your life, just know that you aren't alone, and give yourself some grace and try and find the core of it through these other things that I had mentioned, and see if that helps with it, and see if that helps. And that I just want it to help. I want it to be, I want you to be good in a good spot. So anyways, I really hope that this helped you in some way. I, didn't know what I was going to speak on. And then this just came up, and this is what I've been really struggling with this week. And I had so much feedback on Instagram that I thought maybe I'm going to talk about this. It's not really spiritual, but it is. It is, because sometimes, like I said, spiritual awakenings and mental health are parallel. They really are. So tune into your body, figure out what it needs, figure out what you need, and give yourself some grace and lots of love, because that's where you're going to find the healing and the answers. And don't be so damn hard on yourself. And I will listen to this podcast and take my own advice. So love you guys so much, and I will talk to you next week.